The life of a Roman soldier wasn't for just anyone. Forget the romanticized image of warriors draped in glory and bathed in gold. The reality was far more brutal. From the moment of recruitment, every man who dared to don the armor of the Roman Empire was thrust into a world of relentless discipline, grueling training, and battles that could end in a swift death, or worse, years of suffering. But those who survived didn't just become war machines, they secured a place in history. Few speak about the true cost of being a Roman legionary. Many believe that a soldier's life was full of conquests and rewards, but the truth is that, for most, it was a path paved with pain and sacrifice. Only the strongest endured. Only those who could power through endless marches, bear the crushing weight of their armor under the scorching sun, and face barbarian armies without a second thought. And even then, war was only half the journey. The Roman Empire didn't merely use its soldiers, it molded them, tested them, and ultimately rewarded them in ways few could imagine. But here's something not many know. A Roman legionary didn't fight solely for Rome. He fought for his own future. For poor citizens, the army was the only ticket to climbing the social ladder. For provincials, it was the key to earning the coveted Roman citizenship. And for everyone, without exception, it was a road that led either to glory or to death. And even those who survived the battlefield faced an even greater challenge: the transition from war to civilian life. How could someone who spent decades killing in the name of the Roman Empire simply hang up his sword and start planting wheat? The answer to that question lies in the details no one tells you. The grueling training, the harsh hierarchies, the paychecks that never quite lived up to their promises, the promotions that relied more on politics than on sheer bravery, and in the end, the rewards, the lands, the honors, the medals that ensured a Roman soldier would never be forgotten. If you've ever wondered what really happened to those warriors who built one of the greatest empires in history, get ready. Because the life of a Roman soldier was so much more than just fighting. It was about surviving. If there was one thing a Roman soldier learned from day one, it was discipline. The Roman Empire's army didn't tolerate amateurs. It was a ruthless machine, powered by a strict recruitment system and training that forged warriors of steel. Since the days of the Roman Republic, soldiers were picked from able-bodied citizens and transformed into true war machines. What set an ordinary army apart from a Roman legion? Consistency. The Romans didn't fight only when necessary. They trained and honed their skills every single day, becoming a force that was virtually unbeatable. The life of a Roman soldier wasn't just a temporary job. It was a lifelong commitment. Those who enlisted knew they were about to face years of grueling service, where loyalty to the Roman Empire and absolute obedience were non-negotiable. The rigor wasn't confined to the battlefield. It permeated every detail of their daily routine. If a legionary let his guard down, not only was his life at risk, but so was the lives of his comrades. That's why every order was followed without hesitation. This explains why Rome conquered and held onto territories for centuries, not by luck, but through the absolute professionalism of its army. Imagine an ordinary soldier from any army of that era compared to a Roman legionary. The difference was striking. While other soldiers received only basic training, often just when war broke out, a Roman legionary practiced relentlessly, refining his combat techniques, perfecting military formations, and building up his physical endurance. It was like comparing an amateur athlete to an Olympic champion. The Roman Empire knew its power depended on these men, so it spared no effort to ensure they were the best. And to reach that level of excellence, nothing was left to chance. A Roman soldier's training began early and was unrelenting. Forced marches spanning dozens of kilometers, heavy armor, exhaustive battle simulations. Everything was designed to ensure that when war came, there was no hesitation, only action. An army's strength wasn't measured solely by brute force. but by its ability to maintain cohesion and discipline even in the most chaotic circumstances. The secret of Roman supremacy was simple. The training was tougher than the battle itself, but before becoming this flawless cog in the machine, the Roman army had much more humble origins. In the early days of the Roman Republic, soldiers were recruited in a very different way, following some rather peculiar criteria. After all, Rome wasn't always the military powerhouse we know today. So, how did this system begin? In the early Republic, being a soldier wasn't exactly a choice. It was a civic duty. The army wasn't composed of professionals like it would be in the empire's heyday. It was made up of citizens called up as needed. War was seasonal. When winter ended and the harvest was in, it was time to take up arms. There wasn't a standing army, and recruitment followed specific criteria. Only men with a certain level of wealth could fight because they had to pay for their own equipment. Thus, those without means were left out, or rather, they stayed behind, supporting the city while the wealthier ones headed off to war. This created a clear division. The rich served as cavalry, donning expensive armor and riding horses, while the less affluent fought as heavy infantry, equipped with shields and spears. But the situation was even more complicated for those with lower incomes who, if called, would have to fight without the same level of protection, making them easy targets on the battlefield. In a way, the army was a reflection of Roman society, a pyramid where the privileged had more resources to survive. However, this recruitment model proved unsustainable as Rome expanded its borders. With more wars and longer campaigns, relying on temporary soldiers became a problem. How could Rome trust that an army hastily assembled would have the discipline and strength needed to defeat organized, warlike peoples like the Carthaginians? That's when Rome realized it needed to change. The solution? Create a more structured army capable of fighting year-round, regardless of the season. This transformation wasn't sudden. It came through reforms and adjustments that paved the way for what was to come. The first step was to change recruitment by broadening the soldier base and allowing even the less fortunate to participate actively. This gave rise to a new kind of Roman legionary, more diverse, more resilient, and above all, better trained. It was no longer a ragtag group of improvised farmers holding swords. The army began to professionalize, adopting a model where experience mattered more than wealth. It wasn't yet the invincible force of later years, but it was a huge leap forward. And so, as Rome grew stronger, the need for permanent soldiers increased. It was during Augustus's reign that this process reached its peak. The army, which had previously depended on temporary conscripts, became composed of professional warriors with fixed salaries and guaranteed benefits. But how did this change the lives of the soldiers and the way Rome recruited its warriors? With the rise of Augustus, the Roman army underwent a silent but definitive revolution. The old system of temporary recruitment was abandoned, and legionaries became professional soldiers, paid regularly to serve the empire. This brought stability to both the warriors and Rome, ensuring that there were always experienced troops ready to spring into action. More than ever, being a Roman soldier wasn't just a civic duty, it was a full-fledged career. The empire now depended on long-term warriors who lived and breathed the art of war. But an even deeper change occurred. Recruitment was no longer restricted to Roman citizens from Latium. It began to include men from the provinces. Gauls, Iberians, Syrians, and even Greeks started to fill the ranks, turning the army into a diverse and multicultural force. For many, joining the Roman army was a chance at social mobility. Serving meant earning Roman citizenship at the end of military service, something incredibly valuable. It was a shrewd move by Rome. While expanding its territory, it also secured the loyalty of conquered peoples by giving them a direct stake in the empire. The profile of the Roman soldier changed drastically. Before, they were small farmers leaving their fields behind to go to war. Now, they were men from various backgrounds, trained to fight as a cohesive unit. The Roman legionary was no longer just an armed citizen, but a professional who spent years perfecting his skills. This also brought a new level of commitment. Soldiers who served for 2 decades or more developed a much stronger bond with Rome and its interests. They didn't fight merely out of obligation. They fought because their lives were inextricably linked to the Roman Empire. And this new model brought immediate benefits. With permanent soldiers recruited from all over the empire, Rome was able to sustain constant military campaigns without relying on seasonal citizens. The discipline and experience gained over years of service made the Roman armies even more efficient. Moreover, this change created a network of veterans spread throughout the empire, reinforcing Roman influence in every conquered corner. But what happened to these soldiers after years of service? The Roman Empire didn't simply discard them once their duty was done. On the contrary, there was a well-defined system to ensure they were rewarded. And this leads us to the next point. The life of a Roman legionary didn't end on the battlefield. It continued with the promise of a dignified retirement. How did this cycle work? A Roman soldier's life was defined by a rigid, predictable cycle. It all started with a choice. Some enlisted voluntarily, drawn by the promise of pay, glory, and, for non-citizens, the coveted Roman citizenship. Others, however, had no choice. They were conscripted by the empire to meet the need for troops. Regardless of the path taken, the outcome was the same: a commitment of at least 25 years of military service, a long and exhausting period that tested not only physical strength but also mental resilience. For those who survived this journey, the rewards were enticing. Soldiers received a generous pension upon retirement, which often included land in Roman colonies. Imagine spending decades fighting for Rome and in the end being rewarded with a piece of fertile land where you could finally rest. This was the dream of many legionaries, and Rome knew that securing this benefit was crucial to keeping its troops loyal. After all, an empire can only sustain itself if its soldiers believe it's worth fighting for. However, not everyone made it to the end of the journey. Many perished in brutal battles or succumbed to diseases and hardships during long marches. The life of a Roman soldier was full of uncertainties, but the inevitability of death was always present. For those who fell in combat, Rome did not forget them. Dignified burials were ensured, and their names were preserved on funerary stelae scattered across the empire. This reinforced the idea that serving the Roman Empire was something grand, something that transcended one's very existence. But what about those who survived? Many became instructors, passing on their knowledge to new recruits. Others, thanks to the experience they had gained, were absorbed into provincial administrations, serving as guards or military advisors. The transition from military life to civilian life wasn't always easy. Imagine spending 25 years accustomed to the rigor of army life and then suddenly having to adjust to a peaceful routine. For some, peace was a prize. For others, it felt like a punishment. But before even dreaming of retirement, the new recruit had to survive the first major challenge, the initial training. And that, as we're about to see, was no easy feat. The Roman Empire didn't tolerate weakness, and soldiers had to be forged in the fire of discipline. Want to know what set an ordinary man apart from a true Roman legionary? Joining the Roman army wasn't just about putting on armor and grabbing a sword. The training was brutal, designed to transform any ordinary recruit into a genuine Roman soldier. During the first 4 months, new legionaries underwent an excruciating regime that included endless marches, rigorous physical exercises, and intensive technical training in the use of weapons. The Roman Empire knew that a battle wasn't won solely by brute force, but by discipline and preparation. Thus, each legionary was molded to withstand extreme conditions before ever stepping onto a battlefield. Training began with something seemingly simple, but extremely taxing: walking. But it wasn't just any walk. Roman soldiers had to cover up to 30 kilometers a day, fully equipped and at a pace so brisk that many would pass out from exhaustion. This wasn't merely a test of endurance. Rapid marching was essential to Roman military strategy. An army that could move swiftly had a decisive advantage over any enemy. Moreover, this practice ensured that soldiers could endure long campaigns without collapsing along the way. Next came weapons training. Initially, the recruits didn't practice with real swords, but with wooden replicas that were twice as heavy as the standard weapons. The idea was simple. If someone could handle a heavier sword, then when wielding the real one, his movements would be quicker and deadlier. This technique, even used today in sports like baseball and boxing, where athletes train with extra weights to boost their agility, was already known to the Romans over 2,000 years ago. Besides sheer strength, a Roman soldier needed to learn how to fight as part of a team. No legionary won battles alone. Training involved extremely precise combat formations, like the famous testudo, tortoise, where soldiers formed an impenetrable wall of shields. Every movement was rehearsed until it became an automatic reflex. There was no room for individualism. If a soldier moved out of position at the wrong time, he risked endangering the entire legion. The secret of the Roman Empire lay in that perfect synchronization, a factor that left its enemies utterly terrified. Finally, the last phase of training was a true trial by fire. Battle simulations against seasoned veterans. The goal wasn't merely to teach techniques, but to force recruits to develop mental resilience. The Romans knew that fear could shatter an army before the first blow was even struck. So, the instructors created chaotic scenarios to accustom the soldiers to the stress of battle. And those who failed to show progress, they were simply let go. The Roman army had no place for the weak. But for those who persisted, there lay a long and challenging road ahead, including the possibility of climbing the ranks. But how did that ascent work? In the Roman army, climbing the hierarchy wasn't an easy task. Contrary to what you might think, a Roman soldier's promotion didn't rely solely on bravery or exceptional battlefield prowess. Experience mattered, but connections and influence weighed heavily. Many legionaries spent years in the same rank, waiting for the right opportunity to advance. A commander might recognize a talented soldier, but without the right contacts, his chances for promotion were slim. The Roman Empire was driven by both merit and politics. The first major leap in a Roman soldier's career was becoming an optio, a sort of assistant to the centurion. This position was crucial, as it signified that the soldier had been recognized as reliable and disciplined. The optio helped organize the troops, trained new recruits, and often served as second in command. For those dreaming of becoming a centurion, the backbone of the legions, this was an essential first step. But the path was long, and not everyone made it. Centurions, in turn, were the true commanders of the infantry. Each legion had about 60 centurions, responsible for ensuring that orders from above were followed to the letter. Being a centurion was an honor, but it also came with a heavy burden. Unlike common soldiers who could retreat if a battle turned unfavorable, centurions were expected to fight to the death if necessary. A centurion who abandoned his post would not only lose his rank, but also his life. Loyalty to the Roman Empire was demanded in blood. Above the centurions, few managed to climb further. Military tribunes were young aristocrats who often received their positions through family influence. Although they had authority over the legions, most lacked the experience of seasoned soldiers. Then there were the legates, who commanded entire legions and were chosen directly by the emperor. These men were true strategists and, in many cases, went on to govern provinces after years of service. It was a power game where only a select few reached the top. But regardless of rank, they all shared one thing in common: a Roman soldier expected to be well rewarded for his service. After all, no one devoted years of his life to the Roman Empire just for glory. Salary, benefits, and rewards were crucial to keep the war machine running. But how much did a Roman legionary actually earn? And how did Rome handle the financial side of its army? A Roman soldier's salary varied considerably over the centuries. But one thing was certain: no one enlisted solely out of love for the country. In the early days of the Republic, soldiers were practically amateurs, called up only when needed, and didn't receive regular pay. The fight was seen as a civic duty, but as Rome's wars grew, it became clear that warriors needed a bigger incentive to risk their lives. That's when the stipendium came into being, the first regular payment for soldiers, a model that evolved into a true military career. During the Roman Empire, Augustus overhauled the system and established a fixed salary for legionaries. A common Roman soldier received about 900 sesterces a year, which was enough for a modest life, though not a luxurious one. In addition, he could earn occasional bonuses during major conquests, such as a significant military victory. But the real allure of the career wasn't just the salary, it was the benefits. At the end of his service, a legionary would receive a substantial sum of money or land in a Roman colony, ensuring his financial security. Of course, not everything was rosy. Soldiers faced various deductions from their pay, costs for food, equipment, and even taxes to help fund the army. This meant that in practice, what remained of their earnings was often less than expected. Many legionaries even ended up accumulating debts with their superiors, forcing them to continue serving longer than planned. Yet despite these hardships, few jobs offered the same stability as the Roman army. In uncertain times, the promise of a fixed salary and a dignified retirement was simply irresistible. In addition to regular pay, there were also war spoils. When a legion triumphed in battle and sacked a city, the soldiers could claim a share of the booty: gold, jewels, weapons, and even slaves. Some campaigns were so lucrative that a single loot could be worth more than years of salary. This was one of the main reasons so many young men enlisted, the possibility of rapidly amassing wealth through a major conquest. However, this fortune was never guaranteed. It depended entirely on luck and military success. But what happened when a soldier's service came to an end? The Roman Empire knew it couldn't simply abandon its veterans. That's why it created a system of military colonies where retired soldiers were granted land and a new purpose. After all, a veteran Roman wasn't just an ex-combatant. He still played an essential role in the expansion and maintenance of Rome's dominion. But how did this transition from war to civilian life work? When a Roman soldier finally left military service after decades of fighting for the empire, his journey was far from over. Rome didn't just cast its veterans aside, instead, it used them as strategic tools to consolidate its control. Many were resettled in military colonies, newly conquered territories where ex-soldiers received land to cultivate and call home. But this gift had a very clear purpose: to strengthen Roman presence and ensure that the provinces remained firmly under control. Imagine a city freshly annexed by the Roman Empire. Before it was fully Romanized, it was natural for local inhabitants to resist. And that's where the veterans came in. Placing retired soldiers in these regions was an effective way to spread Roman culture, maintain order, and prevent revolts. After all, who better than a group of experienced ex-legionaries to dissuade any thoughts of rebellion? Thus, these colonies weren't merely settlements. They were true outposts of the Roman Empire, but life in these colonies wasn't just about politics. For many veterans, it was the first opportunity to experience a peaceful routine. After years of marching, fighting in battles, and enduring the rigors of military life, they now had the chance to build a home, cultivate their lands, and raise a family. For a Roman legionary who had survived countless campaigns, that was a prize nearly as valuable as gold. Many even went on to found cities that prospered for centuries. Of course, not all were content with a quiet life. Some veterans, especially those with administrative skills, were absorbed into the government and began working as local officers or military advisors. The experience they'd gained on the battlefield made them invaluable to Rome, which always needed capable men to command and organize its vast provinces. Thus, the Roman Empire not only rewarded its soldiers, but also repurposed them in a strategic manner. But for those who truly retired, there remained one final desire: recognition. It wasn't enough to simply receive land and wealth. Many wanted their bravery to be remembered forever. And Rome, a city that prized military glory above all else, had its own system for this. The Roman Empire boasted a variety of decorations to honor its most fearless warriors. And among medals and honors, there were awards that meant more than any treasure. But how did a Roman soldier earn these accolades? For a Roman soldier, surviving a battle was already an achievement. But to be recognized by the Roman Empire as an exceptional warrior was an even greater privilege. Bravery didn't go unnoticed, and soldiers who displayed extraordinary courage were awarded special honors. These decorations weren't just symbols of prestige, they were proof that the man had accomplished something monumental. In a world where military glory was the highest ambition, receiving a medal could turn an ordinary legionary into a legend. One of the most common decorations was the torques, a gold or silver collar awarded to soldiers who demonstrated exceptional bravery. There were also military bracelets given to warriors who stood out in combat. But the pinnacle of rewards were the civic crowns, made of oak leaves and bestowed upon those who saved a comrade's life on the battlefield. Receiving this crown was one of the highest honors a Roman soldier could achieve, so much so that even the emperor was expected to rise in respect when a soldier received one. Yet no reward surpassed the spolia opima. This was the rarest and most prestigious military honor, granted only to a Roman commander who personally defeated an enemy leader in single combat. Only 3 generals in the history of the Roman Republic ever achieved this glory, turning it into a legend within the army itself. It was the ultimate testament to military superiority and unmatched bravery. For a Roman soldier seeking immortality in the annals of the empire, this was the path. Beyond medals and physical awards, there was another kind of reward: the immortalization of one's name. Many soldiers, upon retirement, had their deeds inscribed on monuments or within barracks and military temples. For a Roman legionary, there was no greater achievement than knowing that future generations would remember his exploits. And, of course, being a decorated veteran brought immense prestige in Roman society. Doors would open, opportunities would arise, and life after the war became much brighter. But the legacy of the Roman army went far beyond medals. The Roman Empire not only trained soldiers, it shaped the economy, society, and even politics. The army was one of the largest employers in the ancient world, and its influence extended well beyond the battlefield. The question is, how could an army impact civilian life so profoundly? The Roman army wasn't just a war machine, it was the engine that powered the Roman Empire. In addition to protecting and expanding territories, the army influenced the economy, culture, and even the social organization of Rome. For many citizens, the army wasn't merely a career, it was an opportunity. It was one of the few professions that offered financial stability and social mobility, something extremely rare in the ancient world. And as Rome grew, the army became increasingly vital in maintaining order and ensuring that the empire stood strong. One of the greatest impacts of the army was on the economy. Imagine what it took to keep hundreds of thousands of soldiers active across vast territories. The Roman Empire had to supply these legions with food, weapons, clothing, and equipment. This created a massive supply chain, stimulating markets, boosting agricultural production, and strengthening cities that served as logistical hubs. Many regions prospered simply because they were near military garrisons, which spurred trade and the circulation of money. Beyond its economic impact, the army played a crucial social role. The Roman Empire was a hierarchical society, and for a landless plebeian with few prospects, becoming a Roman soldier was one of the only paths upward. For provincials, military recruitment was even more significant. It not only provided employment, but also the chance to earn Roman citizenship. This fostered loyalty and helped Rome maintain control over newly conquered populations. After all, a man who served 25 years in the Roman army was unlikely to turn against the city that granted him citizenship and sustenance. The legacy of the Roman army can also be seen in its infrastructure. Many of the roads still crisscrossing Europe today were built by Roman soldiers who not only fought wars, but also constructed roads, forts, aqueducts, and even entire cities. Every legion was a construction crew, ensuring that Rome could move swiftly and connect its provinces. The Roman Empire knew that conquering territories was pointless if there wasn't an efficient way to control them. And who better to do that than the soldiers themselves? Perhaps the greatest legacy of the Roman army was its impact on the art of war. Tactics, strategies, and formations developed by the Romans are still studied today. From their impeccable discipline to their groundbreaking military engineering, everything the army created not only shaped Rome, but also influenced the armies that followed. But this story doesn't end here. What makes the life of a Roman soldier so fascinating is precisely the contrast between brutal recruitment, a harsh military life, and the promise of a glorious retirement. And that's exactly what we're about to explore next. Now that you know the true journey of a Roman soldier, tell me, would you have the courage to face that destiny? Imagine swapping your everyday routine for endless marches, grueling training, and battles where the smallest mistake meant death. For many, this might seem like an insane sacrifice. But for the legionaries, it was the only way to secure wealth, status, and above all, a legacy that would span the centuries. And here's something to ponder. In your own life, what battles are you fighting? They might not be on a literal battlefield, but the truth is that just like in the Roman army, success depends on discipline, strategy, and persistence. What separates the winners from the losers is the ability to prepare, withstand pressure, and never give up mid-march. Whether in business, studies, or your personal goals, are you training like a true legionary or just waiting for luck to take care of everything? History has always favored those who were willing to prepare. Rome didn't become an empire overnight. It was built brick by brick, battle by battle, and that was only possible because its soldiers were molded to be the best. Now, look at your own journey. What can you learn from these warriors? How can you apply that mindset to become invincible in whatever you do? If this content has opened your eyes to a new way of looking at the history and legacy of Roman soldiers, then you need to keep following this journey. Subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and come discover the secrets that made Rome the powerhouse that once dominated the world. Because history isn't just about the past, it's a playbook of strategies for those who want to win in the present. And now, legionary, are you ready for the next battle?